Hello everyone. I will share real stories that I know and I'm sure you will like them.
I never imagined something so small, so seemingly insignificant, could change everything. But sometimes, the simplest moments have a way of unraveling what we think we know about ourselves, about others, about the space between us. It started as an accident. A harmless mistake. The house was quiet that evening, the kind of stillness that settles in after a long day. My husband was out late for work, and the television hummed softly in the background. I had been moving around the living room, tidying up, absent-mindedly shifting pillows and folding blankets. My stepson, Ryan, was sitting on the couch, scrolling through his phone, half watching whatever was playing on the screen. "Tired already?" I teased, glancing at him as I picked up an empty glass from the coffee table. He smirked, running a hand through his tousled dark hair. "Long day," he muttered. I turned, aiming to sit down beside him, but my foot caught on the edge of the rug. Before I could stop myself, I lost my balance, stumbling backward. I reached out for something, anything, to steady myself, but instead of finding solid ground, I landed right on him, right on his lap. For a second, neither of us moved. My breath caught in my throat, my hands gripping his shoulders instinctively. I could feel the warmth of his body beneath me, the unexpected firmness of his frame. My heartbeat stuttered, awareness settling in far too quickly. "Whoa," Ryan said, his voice huskier than usual. His hands had reflexively settled at my waist, steadying me. "You okay?" I swallowed hard, willing my face to stay neutral, to brush it off like it was nothing. "Yeah, just clumsy, I guess." I tried to push myself up, to move away, but his fingers flexed slightly against my sides. It wasn't overt, wasn't obvious, but it was enough. Enough to make my breath hitch. Enough to make me pause. His gaze met mine then, steady, unreadable. There was something in his expression that made my stomach twist in a way I didn't want to acknowledge. "You don't have to rush," he murmured. I should have moved immediately. I should have laughed it off, stepped away, created space between us. But I didn't. I hesitated. And in that hesitation, something unspoken filled the gap between us. The air grew heavier, charged with an awareness that neither of us wanted to name. I could feel the rise and fall of his breath beneath me, could see the way his fingers curled slightly where they rested. It was just a moment, just a breath of time, but it shifted something, cracked open a door I hadn't even realized was there. I started, but the words felt strange, unfinished. Ryan's lips parted slightly, as if he was going to say something, but then he didn't. Instead, he simply watched me, waiting. And suddenly, I wasn't sure if I wanted to move at all. The seconds stretched, neither of us speaking, neither of us moving. The hum of the television filled the silence, the only sound breaking through the moment that felt frozen in time. My heartbeat was too loud in my ears, my breath uneven. I tried to convince myself that this was nothing, that the warmth of his hands against my waist, the way his chest rose and fell beneath me, the quiet intensity in his gaze, meant nothing. But my body refused to believe it. My senses had betrayed me, attuned now to the way he felt, the way the moment felt. His fingers twitched against my sides, the smallest movement, but enough to send a ripple of awareness through me. "You're still not moving," he pointed out quietly, almost amused, almost testing. I exhaled a slow, shaky breath, forcing myself to move, just slightly. But in doing so, I became even more aware of him, the solidity of his body, the way his warmth seemed to seep into my skin. The realization unsettled me in ways I wasn't prepared for. He didn't let go immediately. His hands remained steady at my waist, a grounding touch that felt both steadying and dangerous at the same time. "You okay?" he asked again, his voice softer this time. I nodded, though I wasn't sure that was true. "Yeah, just wasn't expecting to fall like that." His lips curved slightly, the faintest trace of a smirk. "You always this clumsy?" I huffed out a soft laugh, relieved that he was making it easy, giving me an out. "Only when rugs attack." His fingers finally released their hold, and I took the opportunity to push myself up, standing and stepping back, putting the necessary space between us. But even as I moved away, The feeling lingered, the awareness, the shift. The air still felt charged, as if something had been set into motion that couldn't be undone. I cleared my throat, brushing off imaginary dust from my jeans. I think that's my cue to call it a night. Ryan nodded slowly, his expression unreadable. Yeah, probably. But as I turned to walk away, I felt his eyes on me. And I knew, without a doubt, that this wasn't the end of it. Something had changed. And I wasn't sure if I wanted to change it back. The weight of that moment never really left me. Even as I walked away, as I climbed the stairs to my bedroom and shut the door behind me, I could still feel it, like an invisible tether still pulling at me, still lingering in the charged air we had left behind. I told myself it was nothing. A simple mistake. An awkward accident. But deep down, I knew better. I had seen it in Ryan's eyes. The hesitation, the quiet intensity, the way he had held my gaze just a second too long. And worst of all, I had felt it in myself, the breath that caught in my throat, the stillness of my hands where they had rested on his shoulders, the way my heart had stuttered when I realized just how close we had been. I spent the night tossing and turning, replaying this scene over and over. Had I imagined it? Had it really meant nothing? Or had I crossed some invisible line that I could never uncross? The next morning, I tried to shake it off. I went about my usual routine, forcing normalcy into my every movement. By the time I walked downstairs, I had almost convinced myself that I was overthinking it. But then I saw him. Ryan was sitting at the kitchen table, a cup of coffee in front of him, his phone in his hands. But he wasn't really looking at it. His eyes lifted the second I entered the room, locking onto mine like he had been waiting for me. "Morning," he said, his voice even unreadable. I forced a small smile, busying myself with pouring my own cup of coffee. "Morning." The silence stretched. I could feel his gaze lingering, but I didn't dare look at him. Instead, I focused on the rhythmic clinking of my spoon against the ceramic mug, the steady inhale and exhale of my breath. Finally, he spoke. "So, about last night." I froze for just a fraction of a second before recovering. "It was an accident." He let out a quiet laugh. "Was it?" I turned then, finally meeting his gaze. His expression was calm, but there was something beneath it, something searching. "Ryan." "I don't want you to feel weird about it," he interrupted, his voice quieter now. "But I also don't want to pretend it didn't happen." I swallowed, gripping my coffee cup a little tighter. It was just a moment, that's all. He studied me, and for a second, I thought he might push further. But then he nodded. "If that's what you want." I wasn't sure what I wanted. But I nodded anyway, turning back to my coffee, pretending I didn't still feel the heat of his hands on my waist. For the next few days, things almost returned to normal. Almost. We spoke like we always had, shared space in the house without any obvious tension. But it was there, just beneath the surface. A quiet awareness, a shift we weren't acknowledging, but neither of us could ignore. And then, one evening, it happened again. I was in the kitchen, reaching for something on the top shelf when I felt him behind me. I hadn't even heard him come in, but suddenly, his presence was there, solid and warm. "Need help?" he asked, his voice closer than I expected. I swallowed, my fingers curling around the edge of the shelf. "I've got it." I stretched up on my toes, reaching just a little farther, but before I could grab the item, his hand came up beside mine, steadying it effortlessly. His arm brushed against mine, and I stilled. "Got it," he murmured, his voice lower now. I exhaled, barely nodding, and slowly pulled my hand away. But in doing so, my fingers brushed against his. I felt him tense. I felt it in myself too, the stillness, the way neither of us moved away immediately. When I turned, he was closer than I expected, his eyes dark, searching mine for something I wasn't sure I was ready to name. "Ryan." I started, but the words fell short. He studied me for a long moment, then gave me a small, knowing smile. "You keep running away." I let out a soft breath, shaking my head. "I don't know what you mean." "Yeah, you do." Another pause, heavier this time. The air was thick, the same unspoken tension from that night still lingering between us. I wasn't sure if I should push it away or let it stay. But before I could decide, he stepped back, his lips quirking just slightly. "Don't worry. I won't make it harder for you." I blinked. "What?" He gave a quiet chuckle. "You keep pretending nothing's changed. I'll let you. For now." And then, just like that, he turned and walked away, leaving me standing there, my breath still uneven, my heart still pounding. This wasn't over. I knew that now. And the worst part? I wasn't sure I wanted it to be.